Hi everybody, my name is Landon and I will be covering the musicology and production of the 2000s and exploring the hip hop's roots and cultural shifts throughout this time period. The cultural and musical roots of hip hop sampling and what sampling was. Sampling was where you put a lot of the pieces of music together, and hip hop sampling emerged from the 1970s in New York, where block parties became the roots of expression and enjoyment for time and musical innovation. DJs like Kool Herc, for example, used music like this by isolating and extending the breaks in the funk music or soul and jazz records, then transforming them into foundations and new art forms. Sampling transformed into more than just a technique for production. It became a way to tell the story for culture and lifting fragments from musical traditions and giving them context. Early hip hop artists used this all the time to honor their roots and create something new at the same time. This helps in so many different ways because it brings your roots to the culture of where music and hip hop came from. The two main production styles, especially in this era, were East Coast boom bap and West Coast G-funk. Boom bap, on one hand, was more hardcore beats, hitting drums with patterns and funk and things like that, where West Coast G-funk was a little bit different. It had more of a melody and a laid-back groove or vibe, you could say. Producers, for example, like Dr. Dre and Warren G, built on samples and stuff like that. There are many songs and stuff that they produced that cover this G-funk with smooth bass lines and laid-back music. This atmosphere really reflected the West Coast style or California's lifestyle, for example. The 2000s were an insane shift for hip hop. Going from the 1970s to the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s is just a big change in general. While the genre at the time had its sampling roots and boom bap style had laid the groundwork, obviously, from the East Coast in New York, mainstream media became dominated by hyper commercialized bling rap, like music from Lil Wayne, along with gangsta rap, like 50 Cent and The Game. This era was big for conscious rap being pushed to the margins as record labels and programmers prioritized the more mass marketed stuff and didn't really care as much about the lyrical substance and social commentary. A lot of the times, especially at this time period, there were lyrics that just clashed with what the industry wanted, so they didn't get what they wanted necessarily, and so the industry didn't help produce their music, whereas some gangster themes, for example, dominated the charts and dominated the world of hip hop. Mass marketing was huge in the 2000s, and as you can see, the 2000s saw major labels controlling a lot of their hip hop and mainstream just from certain companies that owned mass market demographics, which then helped shape artists who got the promotions and got the opportunities to play their music on the radios and produce their music to the people that were out there and could hear you instead of just around your community, for example. This approach prioritized the bling rap and the gangster rap over conscious hip hop or traditional hip hop, for example. Industries focused on strategies and how they could get the people to consume their music and listen to it all the time. The bling era, which saw a bunch of different brand names like Gucci and Louis Vuitton and Ralph Lauren, these brands, for example, created a huge lifestyle that was portrayed throughout rap culture, whether it appeared in music videos and public appearances. Artists even branded and partnered with these brands like that for fashion, for clothes, for features, for example, ads, so you could put your music out there, just so you could get out there and get your name out there to see who you were and what you could do. The 2000s era of hip hop covered a huge line of wealth display and how it benefited the youth culture. For example, the wealth display. At the time, the more you could produce yourself, the more you could advertise yourself to brands, and the money that you had to put your music out there helped you advertise your music. It helped you push you out to the world, whereas people or rappers with littler money or not as much wealth may have more struggle dealing with the not so much bling rap or gangsta rap, for example. Youth culture was another huge thing that consumed hip hop. The early 2000s was a perfect time for it when a lot of the majority of the West Coast G-Funk was coming out. The youth culture flew to it, and therefore it boosted consumerism and helped produce more hip hop and put the artists on the map. Jewelry and other things like chains and necklaces also caught the attention a lot of the time because you would always see their styles and their brands and their bling, for example, in their videos when they made them, so it would catch your eye and you would find it more catchy to then consume, and you'd be like, oh, this rapper has this, I want this too. So that right there would tie everything in to be like that when you enjoyed someone's music. A lot of the times there were also rappers that dealt with a lot of artistic integrity because they didn't want the mainstream pressure. They wanted to craft their own music and challenge the audiences more emotionally than just creating and catering basic expectations of what the mainstream media wanted. A lot of people didn't want the mainstream. Artists wanted to create their own music and craft in a way that was authentic and raw, that spoke the truth or about their struggles or their culture and other things like that. Some alternative forms of distribution, for example, a lot of time underground artists released music on their own just so that they could keep their independence and keep their authenticity to themselves and express themselves through direct fans. A lot of times, the internet was extremely helpful for the early 2000s, producing lifelines and creating new routes to help push music and sustain careers throughout communication, basically, without using commercial support. Overall, the 2000s hip-hop era revealed how East Coast